Hello friends, and welcome back to the channel. I usually don't do videos like this, but I felt compelled to kind of get my thoughts out after yesterday's events involving Seatin and the ensuing fervor that has kind of erupted in the community. So typically I'll just drop my thoughts on a Twitter thread and just leave it at that. But so after watching Seatin's video yesterday, I honestly believe that we are close to seeing him quit the game entirely and focus on his other channel. To me, his tone and his body language both kind of say it. I really liked a lot of the points that he made. I think they're all valid. We know this because they are points that the rest of the community have been making and trying to get across for a year or more. But what I found most interesting is seeing how the same problem manifests itself differently to players at varying levels. So at my level, the poor design choices that he's talking about in Act 6 and the Act 7 beta frustrate me because there's no way to guarantee that I'll have who I need to do that content with. It could be next week, it could be next month, it could be next year. But at his level, it's the opposite. Players like him have all the niche counters, the good champions already. They're already ranked up to the max. They're already sigged up to an appropriate level, and that enables these players to get through this content, any content really, right away. And remember the Abyss, which was supposed to be this new Everest for players, was cleared within hours of its release, and somebody had it fully explored within a week. And this was after Kabam said that their goal was for players to take months to get through it. Right. Anyways, after I pointed this kind of phenomena out to him yesterday, his response to me made me realize that having all the counters to complete a piece of content doesn't necessarily make it fun to complete. And I think that for players still climbing like me, it's sometimes hard to understand that. It's easy to say that a player like him is spoiled because they just spend and spend and spend and they have everything that they need or want. But from Kabam's perspective, there will always be another whale. There will always be another spender looking to jump into a spot vacated by someone leaving. People quit the game or stop spending every day, and in that regard, I think his comments may fall on deaf ears up there in Vancouver, but this feels a bit different. This is the most popular content creator in the game by a wide margin. This is somebody who helps market your game to over 250,000 players, and I think for Kabam, that type of of free marketing is something far more valuable than his spending habits, and would probably be a difficult loss to absorb if he were to quit completely. Now, after watching the Act 7 beta, it feels like the intended audience for content just continues to get smaller and smaller. And I get that content is difficult to design. It has to be challenging enough to keep your interest, but not so punishing that only a handful of players even bother. It should encourage item use, but not require it. But starting with Act 6, I think that Kabam made a hard pivot, and the content design, as a result, has been mostly terrible since then. Despite months of complaints from the community, and Kabam claiming that they have learned from their mistakes, Act 7 looks even worse, which seemed unimaginable just a few weeks ago. The company lines on complaints about difficulty have been and always will be rather. It's permanent content and come back when you have the champs. But here is the real crux of the issue, for me anyway. Champion acquisition is broken. It's true that the amount of shards that players get have increased, but that doesn't change the fact that a majority of the champions in the pool are completely useless, or at best, severely underpowered for these complex node and champion combinations. Put simply, the rate of increase of shard availability is in no way proportionate to the continuing decrease in odds of pulling a champion that you can use. More to the point, the feedback loop with regards to doing content seems completely disconnected. You're supposed to do content so that you can get rewards, get more champions so that you can do more content. But too frequently, that loop is severed, and you do content, you get champions, but then you can't do more content because you don't have the right champions. You can plow your way through completion of Act 6 just to see, 3 worthless champs pop out of that Nexus Crystal. You can spend thousands of units doing a first clear of the Abyss rather than waiting on Aegon just to get a T5 CC of a class that you can't use. So, what's the solution? Kabam has said before that they don't want us to be able to target specific champions. The best we're ever going to get are the incursion crystals, and even then, it's one shot at a 10% chance at a champion that you want. So something I've brought up numerous times on different channels is that the basic pool is just far too large. Endgame content has very specific utility requirements, and in some cases it's painfully transparent that there are paths and fights that are specifically designed for 1 or 2 champions. You think of something like that Acid Wash Mysterio, where the only 2 counters currently are a King Groot and who's the other one? Man-Thing, I think. And it's getting even worse. The Sabretooth mini-boss in Act 7 with Aspect of War and that new Mercy node, the Mercy node requires you to parry, but after less than a minute, you are unable to parry anymore, unless you have Red Guardian, right? Anyway, the pool gets larger every month, and the chances to pull the champions that you need get more and more hopeless in turn. So I think that splitting the basic pool in half is one way to alleviate this issue, since it's clear that Kabam doesn't have the time, or worse yet, the interest in buffing the 50, 60, 70 champions who are pretty much useless at this level. If you split the basic pool into 2 5-star basic crystals, you could at least have a significantly better chance at getting somebody that you need. And you could cut out maybe half of the garbage champs and put them in the other one. So, champion acquisition is only half the problem when it comes to endgame content, though. The other half is, over the past 2 years or so, I think that a player's skill level has become decreasingly important to the game, just as much as their ability to luck into good champs or spend their way through content has increased. So think back to Act 5. A skilled player could take in 4-star champs and be able to get through content without dropping 100 revives, because the nodes, the health pools, the attack values were designed to be challenging, not punishing. Now we have opponents with 500,000 health pools, 5-figure attack values, and the block damage alone is enough to KO a skilled player. And look, I get that there are incredibly talented players out there who can go in and solo these bosses and make it look easy, but content, especially story content, shouldn't be tuned for just the top 200 players in the world. Compare this to the variants, which I think since Variant 1 have consistently been the best designed content in the game. Numerous approaches to encounters, nodes that don't KO you after a single mistake, encouraging the use of forgotten champions, and solutions that require the full breadth of your roster and not just, use Ghost or Corvus or Quake. So with regard to Act 7, I honestly can't see Kabam going all the way back to the drawing board with something like this. I read through Mike's response yesterday, and I get content takes a long time to do. They're not just going to say, we're going to delay Act 7 for a few months and really rework it completely. The beta is pretty close to what will likely be released, because that is how every beta has gone. My personal experience participating in betas is that Kabam are looking for actual broken interactions rather than, tuning the content, resolving major pain points. Legacy and I think it was Cam, maybe, provided extensive feedback during the various Act 6 betas that they said after the fact was pretty much completely ignored. And these are established content creators, not Joe Summoner, who happened to get a beta invite and is trolling the beta forum with, all of his problems. These are people who took time out of their day to formulate constructive feedback that was summarily ignored by the company. So in the end, I guess we'll see how this plays out. I definitely empathize with folks like Seatin who decide they need a break from the hyper-stressful nature of a competitive alliance. After all, I am on one of those breaks myself, and it's done a lot for my enjoyment of the game. But I guess the irony is that I quit my alliance to focus more on story content, and now it seems that story content is going to be just as stressful as the rest of the game. So, alright, that's it for me. Leave me a comment below letting me know what you think about what I've said here today, about the Act 7 beta, about Endgame content in general, about champion acquisition, will the Steelers win the Super Bowl this year, anything that you can think of. And as always, thank you for watching, and we'll see you again next time.